Ciarán, it is great to see you. Thank you for joining us today. It's been quite a run of events and time since the last time we got a chance to catch up. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just as you said, just been very busy. We've had a great run of events. I was in West Belfast for Terry O'Sullivan was speaking. He was giving a James Connolly lecture. Terry, of course, is the president of LIONA, the former president of LIONA, and then John Sumson, the president of the transport workers, was taking part in an event. And it's that closeness, of the trade union movement between Ireland and the US, and just that interest in Irish America about the development of our peace process, progress and peace. So we've been very busy, and I did have a couple of days off as well, which is great to catch some live music and relax a bit. Maybe relaxed a bit too much.
Well, it was great. I love the way you recounted your experience. The whole island sounded alive with music and cultural events and community events. Really appreciate that in the last letter. It was really good to hear.
Yeah, and it was great to be in West Belfast. And I would always recommend people to come over for the festival in the first week of August. There's something for everything, between Irish rap music, rebel music, 1980s disco, loads of debates, tours, lectures, incredible piece. Most of which are free or very discounted.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody as a part of that organizing team. That was quite an effort. Tens of thousands of people. Really, really impressive.
Yeah, I was tired just attending events, never mind having to run them.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in if you don't mind here. Last time we caught up, we were unsure about legacy legislation, how that was making its way through the House of Lords. Have there been any developments in this progress, and what do we know about what might be on the horizon?
Yeah, so not to get too much into the weeds of how the British parliamentary system operates, but it has to be passed by both houses in most cases. So it went from the Commons into the House of Lords, and then back into the Commons. It had been amended to make it a bit better, just a bit better. So it took away the immunity clauses, so there could be convictions, which would of course help the quest for truth. But they were removed by the British government in the Commons, and they have now sent it back to the Lords. So the anticipation between the ping pong between the two houses, anticipation is that they will table it in the first week in September, around the 5th or 6th, and they will go to cleared out of Westminster that week, so the first week of September. But it's very clear the British government's intent is to continue with this legislation, which has been objected to by all political parties in Ireland, all the victims groups, by the human rights groups in Europe, by the UN human rights observers, and of course the US. And they're not listening to anybody. It's quite clearly, and they're going to try to push ahead with this. And just as a quick recap, it means if you have been bereaved in the conflict and you've not had an inquest, you will not get an inquest. If you're bereaved in the conflict, you will not be a criminal investigation into it. If you've been the victim of wrongdoing by the police at the time, there will not be a police ombudsman's investigation into it. So it's all about covering up the past. It's not about truth. It's not about reconciliation. It's about a cover up of British government involvement in Ireland.
Yeah, and opposed by all parties, and also by a bipartisan group of representatives, senators, and here in America, Irish American organizations and representatives. There's even some breaking news today. The Irish American Unity Conference President Peter Kissel sent a letter to the British Prime Minister reminding him of the special relationship between the United States and British government. He received a letter back from Lord Kane with what Kissel describes as just disdain for Irish America in this letter, dismissing the call and asserting his intention of getting the bill passed. Do you have any thoughts on that exchange?
Yeah, and it's not just the fact that they are ignoring their responsibilities under the Good Friday Agreement. It's not only are they going to undermine the European Convention on Human Rights, it's not only that they are ignoring the Irish government, all of the political parties in Ireland, all of the other political parties in Britain, but they're also ignoring the US Congress and the White House, which have been particularly the Congress. There's been a series of letters. The latest one was last week, headed by Representative Keaton and Fitzpatrick, calling on the British government to end this and return to not only their commitments on the Good Friday Agreement, their commitments on the St Andrews Agreement or the Stormont House Agreement, but also just to recognise if you're going to promote reconciliation, there has to be acknowledgement and truth. And what these processes are about covering up those aspects and undermining reconciliation. So quite evidently, the British government are not listening to the US or to Irish America, but they need to listen.
Yeah.
They must be brought to the table.
Let's move on to the status of the Assembly. Michelle O'Neill, First Minister-elect, was speaking at the aforementioned West Belfast Community Arts Festival. She said, quoting her, she said, "Time's running out of the DUP to answer the simple question, can they do power sharing? And if they can't, two governments need to act in partnership." What are we hearing about the likelihood of the Assembly returning anytime soon?
Yeah, so just so people know the background of this, so the Unionist parties lost the majority in the Assembly. Then they decided that they objected to the British government's proposals on Brexit, a Brexit which they supported, of course, and they wanted a hard border across the island of Ireland, across 300 miles or more than 300 miles of open land. And the easiest way to manage these trade issues is through three ports. So there was always going to be the trade issues were always going to be resolved at the ports of entry and exit, as opposed to a border along the island of Ireland. It was unenforceable that way. So they objected to that, but at the same time, as I say, in the background, they had lost their Assembly majority. Then we had the election of last May, and by the way, they collapsed the government in February. They collapsed the operation of before that, they had collapsed the operation of the North-South Ministerial Council, which is part of the Good Friday Agreement. We had the election. Sinn Féin emerged as the largest party. Michelle O'Neill became the First Minister-elect. And that brought into very sharp relief that the issue is not about trade issues. It doesn't seem to be about trade issues or about Brexit. It's about, can the DUP do power sharing? Will they serve alongside a Sinn Féin First Minister? Will they work alongside the other parties for the betterment of the people? Or will they just retreat because they have lost the majoritarianism and the ability to to set the pace and just make demands? And I think over this year, it has become very apparent that the issue isn't trade, isn't the EU, it is that can they do power sharing? You have to remember the EU and the British had an agreement in February of this year. The DUP said that they were waiting till it had been resolved. That was passed by the British Parliament and become British government policy. So the Parliament that they claim allegiance to supported this deal. They haven't came back. They said that they would invest it. They would have a commission to look at the issue and they would report back after that. Never happened. Yeah. They were in Washington on St. Patrick's Day and says they would come back before the election. Didn't happen. Then we had an election for local government, and the expectation was they would come back after that election to say they make a definitive statement. Didn't happen. And then they briefed to say that they would be back in September. And here we are in August, not knowing why they're going to come back. So it's quite clear. And if you read any of the commentary about this, if you watch any of the interviews, it's quite clear that the issue is, can unionism do partnership government in the North with Irish Republicans and with others as equal partners. And that's a fundamental challenge to unionism. So we will know in the coming days, in the coming weeks, because if we get past September and there's no government, it's very hard to see when a pinch point or pressure point would be for them to come back in again.
Yeah. In
terms of the current approach by the government.
So. There was a quote earlier this week, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said that he believed that a closer partnership was crucial to restoring Stormont and the power sharing executive. And he says, quote, "But there's been a reluctance from Downing Street to go down that road." What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is a British government. We spoke earlier about legacy, who have acted unilaterally on the issue of legacy. They have no, as we would say in Irish, have no gra, they've no love, they've no understanding for the Good Friday Agreement. They ignore the responsibilities of it. And they have turned this issue into a negotiation between the British government and the DUP. And they have singularly failed to bring the DUP back into the institutions. For me, that was the wrong approach. Remember, the whole basis of the success of signing the Good Friday Agreement was that both governments were acting as equal partners, not one demanding or setting the terms for the other, an equal partnership. So we end up having this approach, which has failed. We demonstrated to fail. So there's an onus, if there's no government active in the north, if they have blocked the working of the North-South Ministerial Council and the All Ireland sections, there's an obligation on the British government to actually sit down as partners with the Irish government and determine the way forward. Yes, to get the institutions up, but if the DUP aren't coming back, to say how they will progress All Ireland working, how they will progress governance in the north, and how they will protect the Good Friday Agreement. So I think we're coming to that decision point for the DUP. They either want to be in, or the two governments have to say, just come to the conclusion that they're not coming back, and what the alternatives are. And by the way, this is nothing new. There's precedents there.
Yeah.
Not to get too far into the weeds, but when the institutions were suspended under the watch of David Trimble and Seamus Mallon, both governments acted to progress North-South working in 2002, 2003. They formed a new agreement which progressed that. When they were down again at St Andrews, they said, you either come back in the institutions or both governments will bring forward a new partnership.
Yeah.
So there's precedent there, there's options there available. We just have to see, are the British government up to actually managing this process and acting as equal partners with the Irish government? And it sort of mirrors, they've taken the same approach as the DUP. The question will be, can they act as partners at a governmental level, and can the DUP act as partners at the local assembly level?
Yeah. Well, as you said earlier, you mentioned the support, the bipartisan support coming in the form of letters from congressmen in Washington, D.C., asserting and making plain the broad nationwide bipartisan support for these issues from Irish America. People watching the podcast, you can visit our website. You'll find the Action Center there, where you can easily click through and add your name and contact your senators and state representative to let them know this is important to you. It's an important act. As we can see, they're replying to Irish American leaders. They're receiving these letters. The more pressure we can continue to put, the more effective this work is. And it helps, Ciarán, you and I are headed to DC and New York in the coming weeks to continue these conversations and make sure that there are questions answered and a clear path forward. Do you want to talk about any of those upcoming trips and what we'll be doing there?
Yeah, well, I know I laid out there's two significant challenges, both on the legacy legislation and on re-establishing institutions, but there's solutions to those.
Yeah.
On legacy, the British government can actually come back and honour their agreements and do the right thing.
They've already agreed to.
Or if not, the Irish government can pursue a case to Europe and take the British government to court to get them to honour their positions. So those options are, in terms of laid out, in terms of the institutions. If the DUP aren't up for power sharing, then there's an onus on both governments to honour what they can from the Good Friday Agreement and promote what they can. As Michelle says, the people are running out of patience with the DUP. So there's options to these immediate issues, but again, these issues are a symptom, the outworking of the very positive changes that are happening.
That's right.
So families pursued the British government through the courts for justice, and they have exposed issues of collusion, issues of cover-up, and issues of killing, which is all crucial to the reconciliation project and all crucial about dealing with the legacy of the past. So that's the outworking of where the British government come to. That process will not stop either when this British government's out of power or when their legislation is rejected by Europe.
Yep.
In the same account, DUP are refusing to acknowledge the changes that have happened, that Sinn Féin is now the largest party in the north, that the electorate are changing, that for the first time ever, and the first time ever in the recent local government elections, there was more votes cast for Irish unity candidates than for those who support partition. So these are all the symptoms of the changes that are unfolding. And that process of change, they may try to stall it, but they can't stop it.
Can't stop it. That's right.
So the challenge for us, the challenge for everybody in the US, is to how do we manage this change at this time. So we will be in Washington, meeting congressional offices, meeting representatives of the administration. And we will be in New York and Philadelphia. I'm proudly wearing my Philadelphia t-shirt today. So given to me by the great Paddy Geoghegan. so we will be in we'll be in all three cities, and we'll be talking about the future. And we'll talk what needs to be done, because this process of change cannot be stalled, cannot be stopped. And how do we manage that? So it's all, so as I say, I'm always conscious. We come and say, here's the problems we face, but take a step back, see what the opportunities are, see what the potential is for us to deliver Irish unity, to make good the promises of the Good Friday Agreement, and to get the institutions up and working and promote the cause of reconciliation. They're all doable and achievable, and there's plenty more which we could and should be doing.
That's right. There's an incredible opportunity right now, and with everyone's support, we can get there. And as you say, manage this change coming, which is inevitable, and it's really an exciting time. Thank you, Ciarán, for taking the time to catch up with us. A quick update to find out where we are, to reconnect after summer. We'll be back again soon with updates about how the visits go and how people can stay involved. Again, I'd highly encourage everyone watching and listening to visit the website, click on the Action Center, and click through to contact your representatives about these issues. And we will update those with new actions as they become available.
Yeah, I should also give a shout out to our friends in Canada who are very active as well. And I will be in Canada as well in the coming days. We will also have Pádraig McLaughlin will be in Chicago. We will have Paul Maskey in Philly, and we will have someone in Boston. We will fill in the details of those as we get closer to the dates. So yeah, I think Greg, when we meet up in Washington, you have to dig out the words "on the road again," and that'll be our theme tune.
Willie Nelson playing in the background. That's right. We will share details of whoever's coming over to those cities, to Philadelphia, to Chicago, to Boston. Make sure you're following along on the social media accounts and signed up for our newsletter, and we'll make sure that you get all that information with plenty of time.
Thank you for all your support, and hopefully I'll see you somewhere along the road.
That's right. Very well. On the road again.